that I was playing in the past. Now I'm super fast, real raw, relevant. I'm also known as super bad, with a super attitude. If you don't like it, you can book a pass and be the first in line to kiss mine. Wait a minute, what I mean is I'm a lion, not a sheep. I don't need a weakling around to try to follow me. I'm destined to be better, getting bigger every day. I don't got the patience to sit around try to play. Focus like an animal, king of the jungle.
Every once in a while I adjust my tinfoil hat.
Jake, are we on? Are we good?
Oh, are we talking?
A conspiracy theorist? Are you a conspiracy theorist?
I think I'm becoming one.
Okay.
Ironically.
So, hey, Jake, are we on? Are we good? We asked Jake if we're on. I want to make sure before we get into the conspiracy theory and whether or not aliens exist and we landed on the moon that we're actually recording this.
Oh no!
I'm not as techie as I probably should be. I think we are, and it looks like we are. So, okay.
Okay.
So, question number 1 for conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Did we land on the moon?
Is there really a moon? No, I'm playing.
I see the moon. We can't go that far. Look, we're in the Matrix, but we don't have to go like that deep into the Matrix.
Okay. As far as I know, I think we did.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How come we've never been back is the question.
That is the question, though.
If
That's
we
when I start
really
going, okay, how do I
went-
fold this tinfoil hat and put it on?
Yeah, if we
Because
really
that's where I go.
went, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. To me, I'm
Yeah.
just like practical. Like, all right, let's talk about the practicality.
Yeah.
Cool, we went to the moon. Awesome. We landed, Buzz Aldrin, they got out, they walked around, planted a flag, yada, yada, yada. Like, why have we never been back?
That is a good question, and I have always thought that. Why not?
I
And
mean,
I lived in Florida, so...
we're exploring. We're
Right.
still trying to discover.
Right.
We're shooting rockets out into space. It's a good question.
It is.
So the question is, did we land on the moon?
It does get you down that thought of, did it really happen?
Who really shot JFK?
Oh, no.
If we were going conspiracy theory, we could go here all day long.
Did you see that white rabbit just shoot out the door?
Right.
Follow it.
Right around. I think that there's a lot of stuff, and this is kind of a cool segue into what we're talking about. My friends, I'm here with Christine today, and she's with Truce. I'll let you introduce yourself here in a second, but we obviously love to get off track. And maybe it's not even off track. Maybe it's supposed to be on track in talking about conspiracy theories, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist because at the end of the day, if it's not a theory,
Right.
it's true. You know what I
Right,
mean? And so
right.
conspiracy, yada, yada, yada. The president has a big book in his desk of all of like where the aliens are really buried in like Area 51. I'm just like, dude, give me a freaking break, man.
Yeah.
People are smart enough. We have enough technology privately that we'd figure that shit out.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I do. But I also think we shouldn't just blindly accept. I think for too long we as a culture blindly accept, oh, well, you're an authority. We voted you into office. So you must be.
If you go down this path, I wonder how long we can record this, like how much battery time we have in this space, because that's like I'm a big advocate, big proponent on that. In fact, I went on a rant yesterday. I don't know if you saw that, but I went on a total rant on Instagram, and I'm waiting for my campaign manager to call me. Apparently, he hasn't seen it yet either. Call me and be like, dude, pull that shit down, because that's my entire platform, my entire conversation is about what you just said. Like, why are we so silent? Why do we think that we're the minority? Why do we think that power and the politicians and the government is really in charge? Like, we've allowed this consciousness in this conversation to say, well, it's bigger than us. We can't stop it. We can't slow it down. There's nothing we can do. We're just measly little citizens. And I'm like, are you guys out of your freaking mind? Like 240 years ago, Paul Revere came riding through town saying the British are coming. You got two options, like roll with me and potentially live, or your ass is going to die. And it was kind of like, there was no conspiracy there. There was no anything. It was like fight, declare your independence, so on and so forth. And I mean, I think that we're in that same
We are. I mean,
space
you can
now,
feel
you
it.
know?
You can feel it happening now. I mean, there's people kind of pushing back at what is actually real anymore, because we are just feed propaganda. I was just telling my dad the other day, we were talking, he loves Fox News. He watches it. I've pulled away from watching too much anymore TV because it's all entertainment. It's all entertainment. And I'm like, Dad, I know you like your shows. I know you like to watch your certain, celebrities on the news, but just remember it's entertainment.
All news is bullshit.
Right.
All of it. CNN,
So
Fox,
it's always
ABC,
consumed-
NBC, they all, and I don't care, like, you know, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm going to watch Fox News and damn CNN. Oh, I'm a liberal, I'm going to watch CNN and damn Fox News.
Yeah.
They're all set up the exact same.
Exactly.
They all have sponsors, they all have their donors, they all have boards, they all have presidents, they all have CEOs, they all are the exact freaking same. No,
Exactly.
None of them is better than the other. Period. It's all propaganda. It's all meant to like make you jump and to move and to be afraid and to be scared and to be quiet, all of this other
Yep.
stuff. But what I'm finding is so few people ask questions. I'm
That's true.
38 and I have 3 kids, and my kids are like, you know, why dad? Why dad? And when I was a younger father, I was like, because I said so, right? Like my parents, you know, you ask your dad why, just shut up and because I'm the dad and I say so.
You're too young. I'll tell you when you're older.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
got a
38. I'm asking why
Right.
more than I've ever asked. I'm like, wait a second, what does that mean? Why? Like, why are we really investigating Russia? Can somebody give me like a legitimate reason that we're still talking about Russia in the election? Can somebody just somewhat educate me on why we're still doing that 6 months, 7 months after the election? Like, what's the purpose of all this? What are we doing? So I'm asking myself questions why
All the time.
all the time.
And
know
you
what I mean?
should, and we
Well,
all
it's
should.
It's the foundation of education. If you're not
It is.
asking any questions, you're not learning anything.
Right. And blind acceptance is really deadly.
Why do you think people are like that? And in specifics with, you know, with your cause and what you're doing, which I want you to tell everybody, you know, about that here in a second. Why do you think it is that we as a society just blindly follow?
We're taught it's easier to control the masses if we're kind of put here, your blinders when you're born, here are your blinders, here's your box, here's your labels, and this is how we label each other, and this is how we function in our society.
Dallas, has she been listening to my podcast and my videos?
I haven't actually.
It's fascinating because I say the same thing.
Oh, well.
I mean, the idea and the concept of us being, I mean, from the time we're born, we're
It's
programmed to
programming.
lie.
Exactly.
Sit down, quiet down, slow down. Don't ask any questions. Don't
It's the
say
only way you
anything
control the masses.
that's going to offend anybody. Because
Yeah.
if you do, and the crazy thing, I've really, as a father, I've started to really look into this. If you get in trouble in school as a kid, they call your parents and say that little Johnny, Sean, did this, and then you're in trouble at home. And this entire institutionalized idea of school and education and hurting the masses and following blindly is supported by our parents. So our
Yeah.
entire upbringing from the time we were little children was in support of us following this mass of people and living inside of this box.
Right.
School, our educators, our teachers, our parents, our job, just sit down, quiet down.
You're taught that at school.
Yeah.
Public school. This is how you're taught. This is how you assimilate so that you can pipe down and go to work and just get on that mill and just, you know, be part of the rat race. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. I had the unique pleasure of having a narcotics officer for a father. He was also a Vietnam vet, which made a very strange
Interesting.
balance for me, because in the same breath he respected the law and he wanted me to abide by the law, but he also questioned government. And serving in Vietnam for 2 tours, you would question, but he always had respect, and we always went to 4th of July. We always were patriotic, you know, and so it was a very strange upbringing. So I do respect the law. I do respect government if it's kept small and intact by the people. And so there's a strange balance going on in our country.
I don't think it's strange at all. I think it's absolutely fascinating, number one. And number two, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell in The Tipping Point. Great author, great book. For you guys who haven't read it, he talked about how the pendulum swings. And it swings in society, it swings with culture, it swings with trends.
Exactly.
And he talks about how, you know, it kind of reaches this critical mass, it stops, and then as it swings back, it kind of starts slowly. But as it reaches the apex, this, you know, the literal pendulum swings down, it just becomes like violently fast to the point that it can't be stopped.
Right.
And I think we're moving in that same direction, which is, I'm very patriotic, I'm very American, I'm running for Congress. I mean,
Right.
not because I want the money, I make way more money than I will as an elected official. That's like a job. I don't want a
It
job.
is.
I'm anti-job. I work for myself. I had a, quote, real job for a couple years. and I was terrible at it because I hate being told what to do, right? But I'm signing up for this real job, if you will, because at some point in time, somebody has to step up and truly effectively, like, not try and be part of the mass in figuring out a solution which has not been solved,
Right.
but actually creating revolution, the revolution of thought, the revolution of practice. But I mean, this entire concept of questioning stuff, you know, we were programmed to talk. Again, this is the beauty of this conversation from the time we were little kids.
Yep.
Question, you know, asking these questions, just shut up. Don't ask any questions. Don't
rock
say
the boat.
anything.
Yep.
Don't do anything. So now here we are as adults. You can't question the government. You can't ask that shit. You can't ask why they can't balance a budget. You can't ask why this congressman is still getting elected after he's being busted for this, or this, that which you and I would be in jail for.
I know,
You can't ask any questions anymore. And so literally that idea and that concept that this thing is too big, I don't believe it anymore. I think there's a revolution of consciousness happening, not only with the conversation, you know, of truth and what you're doing with, you know, medical marijuana and things like that, but just the entire idea where we as adults are growing up and we're 30, 35, 40 years old going, dude, I'm like miserable. Like being in this box fucking sucks. It's not making me happy. It's not making me wealthy. My relationship's not thriving. My kids are a bunch of spoiled little shits because they have their head in their iPhone all day long. Like, what the hell is this thing all about?
Exactly.
And now
Where's
we're starting
the
to ask
meaning?
some questions and like creating that revolution of thought.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoy the conversation. I think it's fascinating. How does that apply to what you're doing? Tell us what you're doing.
Well, I'm working on medical cannabis legislation here in Utah, but also on the federal level. But I'm just trying to raise awareness too, education. A little bit about me. In 1996, I was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. I had brain surgery. They felt they needed to remove it. During surgery, they got 40% of the tumor out, and they hit a blood vessel. And I started to hemorrhage, and I slipped into a coma. About 4 days later, I awoke from that coma, and I was deaf in my left ear. I stroked, so I spoke like a stroke victim. Had left-sided weakness, had to learn how to walk again. And then I had a lot of trigeminal neuralgia pain and a bunch of other pain that just came associated with it. I was able to return back to work. I had to apply for disability. I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids suffering with this tremendous amount of pain and just not able to function. Was put on pharmaceutical after pharmaceutical. That went on for 16 years. I was bedridden, housebound. About 5 years ago, I hit a wall. I couldn't eat anymore, couldn't walk, I was just wasting out at home. The pain meds were not effective. I was on a fentanyl patch using fentanyl suckers for breakthrough, Percocets for breakthrough pain. I mean, they were just feeding to me like Tic Tacs. It was just unreal. And it wasn't helping. It just wasn't helping. And it got to a very suicidal state of mind. And I begged my husband, please just take me to the doctors one more time. Talking about institutions, that's an area that I, as a patient, am fatigued with, is the medical institution. And after 16 years of not getting answer, I tried one more time to the doctor, help me, I need help. And I want to try cannabis. I want to see if this works. And he said, well, it's illegal in Utah. I'll refer you to a pain clinic, and they'll start you on something called Marinol, which is a synthetic THC, FDA-approved drug. We're going to get back to that in a minute. But so I went to the pain clinic, started on that therapy, and about 2 weeks in, side effects. I couldn't handle it anymore. I had to stop and discontinue yet another pharmaceutical drug, another therapy. So I've had surgeries, I've had nerve ablations, I've had trigger point injections, I've had Botox, I've had so many different therapies to get the pain under control. And I was at my wit's end. I went online and I started reading. Thank goodness for Google. I started reading and got more educated and realized a lot of other patients had the same problem I did. And they found relief with actual whole plant cannabis and said, don't mess with this synthetic crap. Get your hands on real plant. So I called my dad, as I referenced earlier. I said, Daddy, I want to try cannabis for my pain. This is what I'm reading. This is what I'm seeing. And without a hesitation, he says, you should try it. And I said, but it's illegal here in Utah. He's like, oh, Chrissy, I bet you can find a bag, though. I'm sure you can find a bag. And I did, which was a very strange way to get medicine, I had to go to my daughter, who was then graduated from high school, but still a teen, 19 at the time, and asked her, do any of your friends smoke weed? Like, I need to get my hands on some stuff, and I don't know where to go. And at the time...
Which, as a 19-year-old, you're like, this is the coolest thing ever. My
Is this
mom wants to
happening?
get high. Yes!
But that poor thing, she has seen me suffer for years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years. She was 5 when I was diagnosed, so she's known nothing but. At the time, though, I was leaning towards, well, this stuff called spice is legal. And I don't know if you guys remember a lot of that, you know, back 4 or 5 years
fad
ago. Oh,
came
my
in,
God.
was crazy, was
Yeah,
bad. And
but it was legal, and it was
Oh.
pitched as legal weed. And so as a, you know, a housewife in little old Utah, I was like, but it's legal, and I won't get in trouble. Should I
Right.
use this? And my teenage daughter saying, oh, Mom, no.
Yeah, stay away.
Right. So she did. She found a friend of hers who uses cannabis to treat her depression, her anxiety, and actually showed me how to use it. And so I loaded my first pipe up and used it, and within seconds I was relieved from nausea. And that's all I was going for, really. Like, I knew it would help with the nausea. Now that's all I wanted to relieve, so I can take more of these pills and get better, you know? And I started documenting as I used the cannabis what it was doing for me, because I was a little freaked out. I heard about cannabis. I used it a few times before. It was recreational, you know,
It's
and it was
weed.
stuff.
It's
Yeah,
bad.
it
It's
was
like only stoners and
it's one of
potheads
those
and
blinders that you were, you know, fixed on.
drug
Yeah,
dealers,
only
and
bad
it's just
people.
this negative thing,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And so I was having a hard time with the fact that it did give me some relief, and I just wanted to document it because I wanted to take it back to my doctor. I wanted to show him what was going on for me. And so with each puff, I would write down. 15, 20 minutes later, you know, I'd have the nausea would come back. So I'd write more down, you know, and I kept track. After 2 weeks of using the cannabis, I started walking again. I was using my cane. My husband was no longer carrying me to the bathroom. I was able to get to the dinner table to eat. Within 6 months, I was driving again. And within 8 months, I was on the Hill trying to figure out how to pass a bill, because this was ridiculous. It was absolutely... When those blinders come off, it's overwhelming at the things you are so angry at, that you've been lied to by your own father, because that's what he was told. My dad became a cop in 1971. That's when Nixon declared war on drugs. My father was one of the very early recruits as an undercover cop in the narcotics. He had his long beard. You know, he was fresh back from Vietnam. He was ready to just, you know, let it all hang out. So from very early on, I had a very different perspective of what drugs were. And now I'm using cannabis. And it was mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing. And I had to do something. I couldn't just sit in my basement and use it. I couldn't just flee to Colorado, because not everybody can leave Utah.
Yeah.
So who's going to stand up and say something? Who? And when? Am I going to look to my neighbor to do it? So I somehow mustered up courage and showed up on the Hill and just started asking questions of people who were standing around. And a lot of sweet people, kind people, took pity on me and said, oh, cannabis? Probably not in this state.
Good luck, yeah.
But here, come help us with, you know, the homeless stuff, or come help
Sure.
us with this issue. And I did. And I learned. A year later, I knew that they were doing and working on the CBD bill for epileptic children. And I came up and I wanted to share my story, that there was more to cannabis than just CBD, and that they shouldn't be demonizing THC or any of the other cannabinoids. There's a whole science that they were missing out on. And I was shushed. I was asked to just be quiet. Let us do this. By the epilepsy moms that were advocating at the time. Because in their defense, they were just looking for some relief, just a little bit.
They didn't
and
want to
they
push the
didn't want to
envelope.
get in the minutia of fighting THC. And so out of respect, I understood. I really did. And I tried not to make waves. But the one I did make a wave with was my own legislators, because I felt I had that right to. I shared my story. My legislator's a physician, so I needed him to understand that this was doing something for me. And Luckily, I pulled together an organization really quick and started building a nonprofit. I started Drug Policy Project of Utah. It was something I wanted to take on, the whole issue of the drug war. It just upset me so much about this cannabis issue, because once you learn about the drug war and prohibition of cannabis that happened in 1937 and just how it escalated and
then
yes,
you know, Reagan and
yes, and Just Say No and the
Yeah.
whole propaganda, and it just keeps going and going, and it has decimated communities. We have for-profit jails. We have more people jailed in our country than they do in China. That's not just a quip to throw out there. It's factual, and it's upsetting, and it's disturbing that a majority of that comes from drugs and moving of drugs. It's really frustrating. And so it was a big thing that I wanted to take on. It's a little too much. Too many people were pushing at me on, well, you know, what about drugs, needle exchange? What about overdose? What about, you know, all these other things? And I realized I needed to narrow my focus. And I really focused in on cannabis, something that's really, truly affecting me on a day-to-day basis. And I know many patients in Utah could work on. And so I started Truce, Together for Responsible Use in Cannabis Education. When I was with Drug Policy Project, I had met Connor Boyack. Mark Madsen,
Yep.
and started advocating with them in 2015 on the first whole plant bill in the state. And that was seriously jumping into the deep end of the water and learning politics.
I remember talking to Madsen back then and being part of some of the rallies and a couple years ago, and it was a big deal.
It was
Yeah.
fantastic. I went to him. I found out he was doing legislation, and I begged somebody to get me just an audience with him. You know, I didn't know how this process worked. And he's like, sure, come to this meeting with me. And I'm like, all right. So the Sutherland Institute's in there, Eagle Forum's in there, and the UMA. As a patient, I don't know who any of these people are.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything to me, like nothing. A few years later, it means a little something now. But Madsen just said, hey, will you share your story? He hadn't really heard it, but maybe 3 minutes before we walked into the room, he's like, wow. I shared my story, and he said, will you help me? Will you help me advocate with this? So me and the other advocate that was in the room, that's what we did. We helped him create a campaign that season that really started to drum up some noise. Year 2016, we came back. That's when I met Dallas. She helped, and that's when we really started to make some noise in the state. We held the Patients Not Criminal press conference and really started to, I think, open up people's eyes about what was going on in the state.
I mean, you can only hear so many stories. Like Dallas and I have talked about this, and
Yeah.
you and Mark, you know, and so many people that just have really positive experiences with cannabis.
Right.
But what's really fascinating is as I watch and I observe, I try and be really observant, especially now being in the political space, what people do, how they do it, how they see it. I'm watching as people are coming to the table and sharing their legitimate experiences. There's a really negative connotation being put now on advocates,
Yeah.
groups, people, almost like you're full of shit.
Right.
Like, okay, this
This is
chick
placebo.
just wants to smoke weed.
Yeah.
So that's what it really boils down to, is she just really wants to get high, and that's all it is. But what's fascinating is like the parallel between that and what, going back to what we initially were talking about, the programming when we were little kids, drugs are bad, just say no, drugs are bad, just and the thought process and the ideology behind this. But yet this is the shit that blows my mind. This is like what I'm a huge advocate of, is conscious conversation and common fucking sense. And it's you're more likely to find fucking dinosaur bones than you are people with like common sense nowadays.
Because it's not common.
Because it's just not common. But like, what people don't wrap their head around is we're literally putting pharmaceutical, like what you're talking, 16 years of putting like
Poison.
toxins and poisons. Now, this isn't just Sean saying opiates and all of these drugs.
all of it.
They're fucking poisons. And if you don't know, believe me, research this shit. Google. This is a fantastic thing called Google, which will actually teach you some shit, which
It
is really
does.
interesting. I just found out about it, but it's great. You're literally talking about toxins and poisons in these drugs, which they're okay. We're okay because a doctor gave it to us.
Well, because it's FDA approved.
Yeah, the government approved it, and my doctor gave it to me. So this this is good.
Yeah.
This is okay. And yet we have an epidemic, a true epidemic in this country, especially in this state, of people being addicted to painkillers, to prescription medications. There's freaking pharmacies getting knocked over left and right.
Yep.
There's junkies on these prescription drugs that are being fed to us. I kid you not. This is just fascinating. We're having this conversation. I was in the emergency room the other night with my fiance, and she's having these migraines, and we're sitting there, and they're doing CAT scans and all of this other stuff. And this guy walks in, and he had slipped playing tag, fell, and his back hurt. Doc walks in. I'm not going to say where. I'm not going to whatever. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Doc walks in. What's going on? I slipped and I fell playing tag. Cool, what's the deal? My back hurts really bad, so on and so forth. Is it broken? Can you move? No. No x-rays? No anything. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you some muscle relaxers, and you can ice it. And if you have any more issues with it tomorrow, give us a call back. Okay, cool. And then the guy says, well, can I get something for pain? And he says, sure, what do you want? The doctor asked the guy, what do you want? He said, can I get some Percocet or anything like that? And he's like, sure, I'll give you a prescription for Percocet. I swear to God, the conversation lasted 3-4 minutes. Doc walks in, your back hurts, cool. Here's some muscle relaxers, here's some painkillers. Dude grabs his prescription and he walks out.
I'm not surprised by this at all.
And not to get sidetracked on what you're talking about with truth and the whole thing, but this is all relative. Like the consciousness, the conversation of common sense, people looking at drugs and looking at marijuana and cannabis as this bad drug that's negative, yet these other prescription medication, these things are as far from natural. They're chemically engineered. They're literally engineered with poisons and toxins, and yet that's acceptable. It's fascinating to me. It's absolutely fascinating how programmed people are to believe this shit.
I think one of the biggest downfalls for us as a society when it comes to pharmaceuticals is when we let it become commercials. Back in the 80s.
Have you watched some of these commercials?
I think I'm dying every time I do.
I'm laughing
So I'm trying not
hysterically because at the end it's like your boobs might fall off, your head might fall off, your fingers might turn numb. If your feet turn black and your legs all of a sudden start spasming and your dog rolls over and dies, your food might turn green and purple and red, your house is going to burn down, everyone in your family probably will die. Consult a doctor.
You better call a
it's
doctor.
Like, did anybody listen to that shit? No. Are you kidding me? Like, but hey, if you want to be like the two couples over here in the bathtub with everything being sunny and rosy and look like they're in the fucking Garden of Eden, go ahead and take this shit.
Yeah.
But there's all of these side effects. People have been known to die taking these drugs. It fucking says that at the end.
It does.
But that's normal because it's on TV. I saw it on TV. It has to be normal.
And it must be fine because somebody in a white coat prescribed it.
I mean, Doc said that it's good.
There has to be some responsibility on the consumer, though, too. As much as I want to rail on the health.
We elected Obama twice. Do you think anybody in this country is responsible? Let's be serious.
Right? We've got to talk about it, though. I mean, people have to stop running to the doctor every time they slipped and fell.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Here's an alarming
mind-bending
fact.
listening to this.
80% of the opiate production in the world is consumed by the United States. We are 5% of the global population. That's alarming. And I think it has a lot to do.
Mind-bending.
It is. It's alarming.
We have a sniffle. We bring our kids in.
Oh yeah,
we
put them on an antibiotic.
You feel weird, you feel a little tweak, you run in. You have a little thing in your back or your knee hurts or whatever, you run in. And that's the solution where if you think about it, like the thing that's really interesting to me is how quickly our society shifted from, let's just say Native Americans. A couple hundred years ago, everything was plant-based. Everything was organic. Everything was raw. You shot it and you ate it. You grew it and you ate it. There was no McDonald's. There was no Burger King. There was no anything. Like it's fascinating how we went from that ideology of medicine to plant-based medicine being bad.
Right.
Being like almost demonized, like with cannabis. Cannabis is demonized, like it's bad.
It is.
Yet it's solving problems across the medical board for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of patients.
And for years, actually.
For
it's
a
been
lot longer than
years.
Prozac and
absolutely.
And Pfizer has been around. So let me ask you this. So how do you with Truce? I mean, I have a voice and have people that listen and reach the masses and the whole thing. You know, it's an interesting phenomenon to have that platform, because people go one of two ways. Like, I feel like the more I speak about things and the more I share my philosophies, the more people realize like this is what he really believes. He's not just some freaking nut job running around screaming and yelling revolution. But how do you do that? I mean, how do you get in a conservative state like this? Like, I truly believe within the next couple of years, medical marijuana is going to be approved nationwide. It's going to be decriminalized. A lot of these people that are sitting in jail for like the stupidest fucking crimes will be let out. I think that the more we bring the common sense to this, the more people that get into Congress and political power that bring the light and bring the common sense. But how are you doing that with truce?
We do it with patient stories, and we do it with advocating for legislation. We were lucky enough to have a sponsor for 2 years who really supported our efforts. Having Madsen support us has been fantastic. We have some legislators who quasi-support us, I think, in theory.
Like closet support you?
There are some closet supporters. They're worried mostly if they're too affiliated with the issue that they'll hurt the issue for us. And so there are some legislators up there that have respectfully said, I'm behind you 100%, but I don't want to hurt the cause.
Sure.
Shout out to the Dems, to be honest. They're like, go for it. You know, we know you got to get the Republicans on board. So they know they can never sponsor a bill. It's just not going to pass legislation. So finding a Republican sponsor who's liberty-minded, it's tough. They can actually handle it. They can actually take this issue on, because it's a big issue. You got to have some big shoulders to carry it.
Why do you think it is? Because I'm gonna tear apart that statement for a second. I don't think it really is. I don't think it's a big issue. I think that we've made it, and the propaganda has positioned it to be this mass. Oh my! If we allow this, like, the world is going to stop spinning, and you're going to see infants coming out of the womb sparking up a joint. That's how bad. This is the kind of propaganda. This really isn't hard. Yeah. This really isn't a hard thing. Here's a medical. This is a medicine.
Right.
Let's approve this medicine to help people.
Right.
Why is that? It's almost like we're trying to reinvent nuclear fucking fission with this, and if we do it the wrong way, it's going to kill everybody. Not true.
And it's not true.
I think it's a very simple conversation. It's a very simple deal. Why is it so hard?
Money. Money is attached to many, many industries that are keeping cannabis and other drugs prohibitive. I mean, if we can be honest, let's be honest.
No, be raw. Like, because people that are listening to this are not looking for like frou-frou, fluffy rainbow shit.
It's
like,
money. It's money driven.
It's 100%.
Prisons, pharmaceuticals, alcohol. I mean, we have to call a spade a spade.
The number one and number two, and this is something I'm really fascinated by, getting into politics. I mean, a couple months ago, I was not running for Congress, and now I'm like, I'm taking this bitch on. Like, I'm doing this deal. I'm going full bore. Somebody's got to do it. But if you do some research and you look, the number one and number two donors to congressmen and senators across the board, almost literally unanimously, is the pharmaceutical industry and the energy industry. And people like have to start using this common sense thing that we're talking about, and realizing that if you're a congressman or a senator, if you're a legislator, if you're someone that I'm running for a federal position. I'm talking like federal government, like taxes and laws of the land. If you're a congressman or you're a senator and your campaign hinges on donations from certain individuals, certain people, and you know this year after year, election after election, like, listen, friends, listen to what I'm saying right now. You have to understand that the way that this system is built, the reason that this negative proposition, this negative idea of cannabis and alternative medicines is the way that it is because you have companies, massive companies, multi-billion dollar companies that are contributing to these certain senators and congressmen's campaigns. And without that money, they don't win. They can't run. And then they let potentially the little guy comes in who thinks like maybe me. That's like, hey, this conversation is really simple. Like, let's let the people have what the people need. But it's really fascinating to me how few people understand that and see that and truly know that, like, this entire thing boils down to someone would literally be able to grow in their home what they would otherwise be spending thousands of dollars potentially per month to live.
That's still the frustrating thing, even with where we are right now, working on legislation in the state with the ballot initiative here in Utah. You're still having a highly regulated system put in place for a plant that has killed no one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Yet how
still
many people,
hard. It's still hard when you work on like legislation.
Yeah.
It's still hard to put up these roadblocks and have to tell people, well, we have to go in incremental steps because apparently we're not adult enough yet.
Sure. But
So-
how many people overdose on
Pharmaceuticals?
every single year?
Thousands.
Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands
Yeah.
of people. How many people die of alcohol
Poisoning or related.
or
Yeah.
DUIs or drinking and driving? Literally hundreds of thousands of deaths a year contributed to alcohol and prescription drugs.
So we know they can't keep using that as an argument. At least that's what we keep telling people, and that's what
Sure.
we keep preaching. Like, this is ridiculous. This is a red herring, and we're tired of chasing it.
Yeah.
So let's get down to the meat of it. And the meat of it is we want choice and we want some liberties and some freedoms to choose what we want to put in our body. And rebelling against that and saying, no, we don't want your FDA. No, we don't want this. No, we don't want that. Pushing back on the government a little bit is what you're seeing because people have had enough. We're over-regulated. We've had enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason that I'm getting into politics. That's the reason
Yeah.
I'm running is I look at it from the perspective, and this is from a much higher conversation of every level of taxation, of freedom, of property taxes. I mean, the American dream is to work really hard, buy your home,
Right.
walk off into the sunset, have your white picket fence and your rocking chair. But the reality is you never own anything in America. You will
Right.
never own your car. You will never own your home. You will never own the ground that your home is on because you will always owe
Big
the
brother.
kingdom money.
Yep.
You will always owe the king. You will always have to render unto Caesar. We will always be paying. And so there's this watchful eye that's will always be there. But yet at the same time, it's like the simplest, most common sense conversation to be able to say, if this is helping me, like what you're talking about in spending 16 years, that's not a fluke. It's not a fluke that you all of a sudden somehow got some cannabis and,
It's certainly
and
not a
found
placebo either.
a deal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that's how many people have to come forward. So how do you change the conversation? Like realistically, like knowing that the way America has been going and the way that we've been programmed, like I'm really interested to know what you think. Cause I'm more of like I just punch, I'm a punch everybody in the face kind of a guy, right? Not physically, but I'm like, look, here's the deal, motherfuckers. Let's have this conversation. I'm dropping bombs and I'm like, let's share this shit on social media. Let's take it to the news. Like, fuck it. Like, that's kind of my style is to just, my campaign manager, I swear, I don't think he's seen what I posted yesterday because he's like, you can't say that. You can't say that. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to say whatever the fuck I want because this is what the people want. That's my style. But obviously my style is
Right.
a lot of people appreciate that, and some people are like, he's nutty. I'm nutty either way.
Right.
The conversation of cannabis, the conversation of legalization is nutty either way you look at it as
It
well.
is.
But how do you change that conversation?
You make it personal. Everybody has somebody in their family that's going to be affected by cancer, by ALS, by Parkinson's, by dementia, by arthritis. I mean, there is somebody in your family that's going to be affected. So getting those personal stories out there, you start to realize, oh, my cousin has Crohn's. And this totally put her Crohn's in remission. And now she doesn't have to be on Humira spending thousands of dollars every month on a drug that's potentially going to give her cancer. I just told Dallas a story. But there's other people too. I mean, there's MS. MS is such a high percentage in Utah.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are going to be effective by cannabis being a potential relief for them. So it's the personal stories. And it's getting to the right people, those personal stories.
Yeah.
Case in point, Mike Lee has a family member that could potentially benefit from cannabis. And he would like to see things happen in a proper way, in a proper manner. He would like to see more research done. He would like to see states' rights in place so that states like ours can actually implement.
We can even research.
Correct. And have patient access if needed,
Right.
and not have to worry about federal government. So Mark and I lobbied Mike last year. We went back to D.C. and asked him, if he'd consider co-sponsoring on a bill that was coming up. It had Cory Booker on it, Gillibrand, and Rand Paul. So we were trying to get a bipartisan sort of thing going. He was worried about some things on it and said, fix it, come back to me a little later. Earlier this year, we came back and said, here it is, it's better. And he says, I'm on board. And so now he's on board and he wants to see those states' rights. And he has a personal interest in wanting this to be at least vetted out.
Right.
I don't want to speak for him, but at least he wants to see it vetted out. And that's what it will take. It takes a legislator who is compelled to get involved, who has a personal story like Mattson did from ODing on opiates. I mean, you have this sort of personal stories and it changes you just like it did me. Like I can't shut up about that. It changed my life. My 2 oldest children didn't have a mom. I was constantly in bed and constantly doped up on drugs. I was going to the emergency room twice a month getting shots. It was insane. I mean, then my 2 younger set have a completely different mother. For the past 5 years, they've had one that's been up, that's been functioning, that's been working and advocating. I'm pharmaceutical free. Like, I haven't been that since I was 24. I'm 46 now. That's insane to me, to be pumped full of poisons for so long and to be functioning and on a plant. You can't tell me it's dangerous. You can try to fool everybody else, but my blinders are off. I can't unsee what I've seen.
Sure.
I've seen MS patients that were wheelchair bound, walking, because the spasticity has been alleviated by cannabis. Not that it's been cured. Their MS isn't cured, but we're talking about relief. We're talking about people among us that just aren't getting it through the pharmaceuticals and whatever other practice you want to throw at them. It's not working. So why not this?
I think what's interesting is I've got some good friends up in Oregon that have Oregon passed, medical marijuana and then recreation and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And they own some dispensaries, and they were kind of the OGs, I guess you could say. They were one of the first dispensaries. They've brought a lot of lawyers on board, a lot of politicians. They're kind of leading a lot of the conversation of, when a state does approve it and pass it, like we just saw what happened in Nevada, in Vegas and big boom and the whole thing.
Nevada's running out of weed, just so you know.
Dude, Colorado wouldn't. Yeah, it's so funny. I was reading about that. I'm like, people call 911. I can't get my weed. Shit. But the same thing happened in Colorado. When Colorado went recreation, I mean, they ran out, which, that's a whole nother conversation about, what's going to happen and the whole thing, which we all know that, the tobacco industry, they're all smart. They're going to be mass grows and the whole thing. But point is that it's been really interesting to be part of some of those conversations with those guys and I've been in their dispensaries and been part of kind of watching them expand and grow. And it's not a subculture anymore.
No, it's not.
It's really fascinating to me that the conversation is not a subculture. It's not a hidden conversation anymore. You have politicians. You have 20-something states?
29 states have whole plant access, but
right.
We have 45 that have some sort of cannabis legislation.
Yeah. So
CBD
so the
whatever.
movement is happening.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this like black hole anymore of like maybe, and it's illegal everywhere. And if you get caught with weed, and I've even seen some of the states kind of not deregulating it, but it's gone from
they're decriminalizing
decriminalizing it. So if you get caught with weed, it's not what it used to be, and you're not locked up for penalties. 27 years, kind of a deal.
Exactly.
What I'm interested in is how. You can't reprogram in a lot of ways what people think and believe, but I'm interested to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years as, the pharmaceutical industry owns the airwaves, they own the TV, they own, all of these platforms. You don't see mainstream ads coming up for this dispensary or that dispensary or this deal or that deal. You see, again, back to your arm's going to fall off, your hair's going to turn purple, your nose is going to like enlarge, and you might die if you take this drug. Like, that's what you see on TV, but it's going to become even more mainstream, in my opinion. I think it's going to start rolling into schools. We're going to have conversations with,
and that's some of the
youth.
stuff that Truce is working on, is educating. I mean, it really is about getting out in the community and educating, finding that city council person that will listen to you, and then he or she brings on more people to hear about this. When you learn about the prohibition, about the actual science behind this, again, it's hard to unlearn it. It's hard to say, no, I'm good with my blinders on.
Yeah, weed, bad.
Right.
But I'll take Percocet and Lortab and all this other stuff all day long.
But we're raising our children. We're raising our children differently. A lot of us that are awakening and seeing this. And so there's a whole generation of millennials that are coming up that have I don't buy into it. I absolutely do not buy into the shit.
Millennials are saying that people are saying millennials are a bunch of lazy, uneducated,
I don't buy into that either.
Some of them are, but no, I agree. I think we're dealing with a revolution of thought in the millennial generation, which it goes both ways. You know what I mean? You see that with the riots and things, but I think a lot of kids are asking more what the questions, like we were just talking about, why? Asking, like wanting to get behind certain things and not just buying into. And this is a conversation that I really enjoy as somebody with a platform, as someone who can put messages out there, is how do I get the message out even more? Like how do I take this conversation and make it so that it doesn't matter where on the spectrum you are, from a liberal to a conservative to a pro cannabis to an anti-cannabis person, but be able to have a legitimate conscious conversation of reality. Yeah. Like there are people that this is helping. This is what it is. This is what it does. Like the comparison. I mean, Dal's showing the stats of the overdoses and the other stuff. I think it's really interesting that the conversation becoming more mainline.
And people like the ability. When we have our events out in the community, we wind up spending about an hour and a half in the parking lot with whoever's attended because they can't get enough of the questions that they have. And just being able to connect with somebody who's either experimenting with cannabis or is wanting to, and where do I start? And so Truce is developing a peer-to-peer mentoring type of program where we have support groups throughout the state, being run by other patients who have either used or want to use, coming together, because there is this void of we're not allowed to talk about this. And it's just now a lot of podcasters are awakening to there's something that needs to be filled here.
Yeah.
We want to do weekly conversations where people can even call in and ask questions because there's new patients every day. Yeah. Every day somebody is diagnosed with something that could benefit their endocannabinoid system by being on cannabis.
It's fun for me to watch it. I enjoy it because, I was a teenager and smoked pot, blah, 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 blah. Did all that crap that everybody else did when they were, what do we call it? Like hellions, rebellious little shitheads. Just stupid kids, but the older I get, the older I get, the more I realize that, this is, if you're going to have a conversation of this kind with the welfare and the health of a human being, like I'm getting deeper into this conversation where I was explaining to my kids the other day, we've talked about this and I'll share that with you in a second, but I was explaining to my kids, I said, I want you to think about this for a second. We're sitting around the campfire. We went camping for a couple of days. And they were asking me, Dad, why are you running for Congress? My daughter asked me this, and I'm like, yes, like, let's have this conversation. And I talk with them about it all the time anyways, but they haven't really asked the why. And we're sitting around, there's no cell phones, there's no anything. And I said, I want you to think about this for a second, guys. Like, I try and break stuff down to really practical, consumable content for them. Instead of saying, well, the federal government, and years and years and years, I'm like, you can go to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger for 99 cents. That's got a bun, that's got a burger, a quote-unquote burger, some pickles, some ketchup. And it's wrapped up in this thing, and then it's put into a brown paper bag. You can go get that for less than $1. You go to the store, and you try and buy a head of broccoli, and you'll pay $3 to $4 for one head of broccoli. I said, I want you guys to think about that. And my kids are kind of like thinking, going, well, you can grow broccoli, and like there's really nothing to it. But then you have to like make the bread and chop up the pickles, and then you have to make ketchup and ground up all the beef and the whole thing. And I'm watching their wheels start spinning, and they're like, we don't understand that. And then that's kind of where I started introducing the conversation of regulations and laws and rules. And I started to explain to my daughter these massive corporations and them being the donors and the contributors to certain politicians' campaigns, and why it is that we can allow what is not good for your body. I don't care who the fuck you are, a McDonald's cheeseburger, I mean, any of this fast food, although it is sometimes delicious.
I love it. The weakness comes over them.
You know what I'm saying? I do enjoy a chalupa every now and again from Taco Bell. Zero like health benefit. But I said to him, I'm like, yeah, I want you to think about this for a second. And my daughter's 14, and I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. When you think about the government and you think about regulation, when it becomes that growing greens is more expensive than it is to take what's not even meat, chop up a whole bunch of crap, throw it into a patty, throw a whole bunch of other like really, really, really bad stuff in there, and then put it, in a piece of paper and sell it. Like, you should have seen their minds.
Yeah.
Their minds were going crazy. And then we started talking about drugs and pharmaceuticals and the drug industry. And I explained the exact same concept to them.
Yeah.
This is why I think, going back to your comment earlier, I think this is a really simple conversation to have.
It is.
I think it's
when you have it with your kids, it's very simple. When I have it with the legislator, it's very complicated.
No, see, this is what I want to change. This is my position. Like, let's run the gamut. You bring up the topic, we can have the conversation from taxes. Like, we've got an 80-something thousand page tax code that no accountants, no real lawyers, the federal government, the IRS don't even understand it. But yet that's just the way it is.
It's how it's always been.
It's how it's been, and you can't change any of that.
Right.
Yet we could just have a very simple flat tax and a very simple tax code. But we decide to complicate things. I think the conversation must be broken down into that simplistic form.
Yeah.
Bite-sized content that like people can truly understand. This is where I was. This is what I was doing. Here's where I am now.
Right.
Like, if you can't put that into your brain and compute that, like, you have bigger problems. Right. But I feel like the more we do that, the more people like yourself and Truce and Joe Rogan. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. His podcast is brilliant. He's a huge
cannabis
smoker. I mean, he's a huge supporter in California. But I've watched some of his stuff and it's so simple, but people make it so bloody complex.
I know. I remember watching him when he just started talking about cannabis, and it's the same realization. Your mind's just blown. Like, I'm not gonna die.
Like, what did that guy just say? He's a total pothead. He's got to be like a drug dealer. He's got to be a problem dad.
Yep.
I guarantee you, he's like drunk all the time. There's just this idea that creates so much complexity, and yet none of it's true.
Well, and I think with Truce, what we do is we try to challenge the stereotypes. I mean, I don't look like a typical cannabis user, though everybody who sees me now may say, "Oh, she's a closeted pothead," whatever. A lot of
that's
patients,
a good idea, though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a marketing guy. I love marketing. Like, let's put up billboards all over the country of moms, your average soccer mom, I smoke pot.
Wouldn't disturb them.
I'm being totally serious. That's a good fucking idea. That's a really good idea, because people are going to look at that and go, "What?
Yeah.
Like, wait,
Yeah.
that's Christine from the neighborhood. I didn't even know."
That's
you know
Christine
what I mean?
From the hood.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Like, actual pot smoker, like in people's subconscious in their idea, and you can take that idea for free, by the way. That's a great. I think it's a great idea. Like, I think breaking it down to that simple form where people realize, holy shit, like the average everyday American is benefiting from this, where I've been told that this is bad. I've been told that the white trench coat is the guy. You know
what's funny is the subculture has been telling us for a long time that it's not bad.
Right.
And so thank you to them for keeping it alive, because I always try to have respect to the hippies and the Rastafarians, because they have been preaching this for a long time. I mean, I really learned about cannabis from a true advocate. I mean, she was from California. She really just taught me in a way that I would have never learned here in Utah. We're not exposed to it. But again, I keep telling people, I keep directing them to our website, to other websites that really dive into the issue on the federal level and local level.
Well, it's the old saying, people fear what they don't understand.
Exactly.
And most people don't understand. They don't understand common sense, period. They don't understand that these pills that they're taking. I've seen, I mean, I was at the airport, and I'm watching this guy pull out of his backpack this massive bag of like 25 pill bottles, and I'm watching him, and he's 2 here and 1 here and 2 here, and I'm like,
holy cow.
What the hell is, like, that's not good. That can't be good.
No.
Like, I guarantee his liver's not like, yay, it's pill time. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you have, but then let's find a pill, a liver pill that we can then substitute and create a healthy liver while he's destroying it. You know what I mean? I really think when you break down this conversation, I mean, you can't go wrong eating healthy. You
Right.
can't go wrong eating greens and eating meat that you pull out of the mountains and you shoot yourself. You can't go wrong using a product, using something that grows out of the ground naturally and organically, that's not put through lasers and poisons and toxins and human things with masks and hairnets and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just common fucking sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I was talking about, going back to the responsibility of the patient, not being so quick to run and get a pill, you know, not being so quick to say, I need the quick fix.
Yeah.
Because that's what I feel like we've gotten lazy. We want the quick
our
burger because
society's
it's a little
lazy
harder
as
to go
shit.
home and steam that broccoli head.
Yeah.
You know, because
So how do you help people not? People listening to this. I mean, who the hell knows how many people listen to this? Maybe we have some advocates, maybe we don't. But what would you suggest to people right now, like that we're in your position, that we're dealing with pharmaceuticals, that we're, in essence, trapped in that level of consciousness, which is, I'm hurting, I'm suffering, I'm dying, I'm whatever, and I'm basically being kept alive by these pills.
I would first find a like-minded community. I really would. I would go, you've got Facebook, you've got the social media platforms. Start finding communities where you can start having conversations with people. Try to meet up. That's how I started. I met people at coffee shops who wanted to talk about the conversation. Then learn the process. And when I mean process, learn how your government works. Learn how a bill gets passed. It's a little more extensive than the Schoolhouse Rock video, because they don't tell you what happens when the bill doesn't pass and you feel defeated and like, now what? Like, you've got to get involved. You can't just let politics happen to you. You've got to get involved. And the biggest thing is educate yourself. You've got to take some ownership and some responsibility. I claim, the government's too big. Well, some of us have gotten a little lazy and we're very quite content with our neighbor deciding everything for us. So we've got to shake off our apathy and get involved. So learn the process. The next thing I would say is do something about it. Don't just be a jockey on the keyboard. Like, get out in your community and actually put it to action. Show up to events. Make those phone calls to legislators. Make that letter actually get into his hand or her hand. Like, it's more than just talk. It can't be talk anymore. So it's just getting involved, getting educated.
It's funny that you say that, because I have all these thoughts that go through my mind. Like,
you're getting involved.
I totally am.
See?
I mean, somebody commented on my Facebook the other day. They're like, dude, Sean, you're just all fucking talk. All you do is yap, 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 yap. You're like the biggest fucking talker. And I'm like, well, it's fast. I took a screenshot from elections.utah.gov. And there's a list of all the congressional candidates. And my name's on there.
Yeah.
And I said, would you mind doing me a favor and circling your name on this list? Because I don't see it.
Right.
And of course, it was crickets. The guy didn't respond anything back because my name's on there.
Right.
I put my money where my mouth is. I am getting involved in the system. I am taking on that neighbor and saying, no mas. Like, this is not happening anymore.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a really fascinating conversation, not just on this, but just on the whole mentality, because I love freedom. I want everybody to be able to do anything, be anything that they want. But I would love nothing more than to have like a national shut off the TV day. Like, imagine if we could actually, not just voluntarily. I'm like, you know what? Let's turn this shit into Russia.
Down.
I'm freaking Putin, and shut off all the fucking TVs. Like, tonight, there's no TVs. You can't watch reruns of shit. And that's going to naturally force people.
Yeah.
And the only website that works is Google. Facebook's down, Twitter's down, Instagram's down, the whole world's shut down, except for Google. Now go fucking learn something. You know what I mean? All the libraries stay open late. All the Barnes and Nobles stay open late.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime, we're on top. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wish that we could do that, because I feel like the more I do that, the more my friends and the people I'm around do that. Like, the deeper shit gets. Like, the further down this rabbit hole we go in understanding what life really is, understanding that we have the control, we have the power. Like, going back to what we first started talking about, we legitimately have the power to change things, to produce our own results. And when enough people get together, they can sway votes. They can change the system.
I did exactly what you did last year. I ran for office for House of Representatives up in House District 17.
Why didn't you win?
Because I ran as a Democrat.
You should have called me.
I'm calling you next time. I'm running unaffiliated. I'm an unaffiliated voter. I'm
running unaffiliated.
Are you?
I'm an independent conservative.
Nice.
But that's how, in fact, I got a guy that messaged me today, and he's like, hey, man, let me ask you a question. Why aren't you running in the convention as a Republican? He's like, I thought you were a Republican. I said, I'm registered as a Republican. I'm Michael Savage, big radio host. He kind of swayed my mind into understanding what an independent conservative really is. Like, I don't affiliate with a party because I think some things that the Republicans do are absolutely dog shit.
Agreed.
I think that many things that the Democrats do are complete dog shit too. But I find myself somewhere in the middle, very conservative in a lot of ways and a little more liberal in some other ways.
Right.
But that's why I decided to run as an unaffiliated candidate, simply because I could bypass a lot of the other bureaucratic stuff happening in the state and take myself like all the way to the finish line. I'm on the November ballot. I could not do anything all summer long, and you'll see my name on the November ballot. Why? Because I did a little research. I did a little homework, and I said, how can I bypass this system that's set up for, as we know in Utah, the Good Old Boys Club and the whole thing. And I found that way. And I feel like if more people do that, get involved, start looking and researching, I mean, you can create a revolution, man. Like,
you can.
A real revolution.
You can. I mean, I got laughed at the beginning of this whole journey 4 years ago in Utah. Like, it's never going to happen in Utah. Now we're running a ballot initiative. Now, that's not the finish line by all means, but...
And I'm on record saying somewhere, I'm sure it's recorded somewhere, that Utah would be the last state in the union.
I'm hoping it's not.
To pass. I think we're close. I think we're really, really close, to be completely candid. I think it's going to happen really, really soon. Guys like Connor, Albertus, a lot of other people are making a lot of good sense. You're making a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people...
working with allies. I think that Connor and I do not agree on our politics. We don't. But I trust him. I when I deal with Connor, not the persona Connor that everybody sees on Facebook and social media, but the guy cares about this issue. He has been touched by these patients. And when you can work with somebody across party lines and say, hey, you bury your label, I'll bury my label.
100%.
Let's just work as compassionate people on this issue.
Right.
That started something for us. And I think the community as a whole has felt it. I think that's what some of this groundswell is just bury your labels and come together on this issue. Seriously, because it affects us all.
I think people are doing that across the board, period.
Yes.
I said this when Trump ran before the 2016 election. I said that 2016 would be the year that you see the dismantling of the two-party system. It won't just instantly happen overnight. Oh, shit, there's no Republican, Democrat. But I truly believe we're moving in a direction where the two-party system is slowly dying. And just the simple labels of I just vote straight ticket Republican or straight ticket Democrat, and the politicians saying I'm an R or I'm a D. Like, I think you're seeing that very, very, very quickly. At all the same time, it's slowly happening, eroding, where more and more independent people are coming up. And Ron Paul, he just couldn't get out of the sandbox. That was his problem, is he played in the same sandbox as the Republicans and the Democrats, which is why this guy asked me today, why'd you run as an independent? You can't win as an independent. Well, I think I can, because I can actually speak on common sense issues and have people understand that, are you voting straight ticket just because of the R, or do you actually want somebody who gives a shit, who's actually going to do something? Here's what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, versus let's just take it over and let's go to D.C. and do the same shit that's happened for the last 50 years, which hasn't helped you or your kids at all whatsoever. You know what I mean?
And that's another thing that's really weird. We have the lowest rating in Congress lowest approval rating in Congress, and we keep electing them. Like, everybody else's Congress guy is bad, but mine is good, so I'm going to keep electing him. Like, it's just
Isn't
a weird...
it crazy? There's a
mob mentality
phenomenon
going on there.
But this is, I think, not to get off on tangents, whatever, but I really do think, like, there's a lot, the more I think about the millennial generation, I mean, the millennial generation is just based off of a census survey that I just saw, just surpassed the baby boomers in population in America. I think that they've been labeled, and again, I'm labeling they as a generation. I mean, hell, I'm Gen X or whatever the hell you would call me. I think there's a lot more power in the millennial generation than we give credit for. I think they came into this space of life and existence at a really fucking awkward time and a really interesting time, because the birth of Facebook didn't really even exist 5 years ago. It wasn't even a thing. And now it's like almost 2 billion people strong.
Right.
You're literally talking about virtual reality. Really wasn't even a thing 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And now it's like a mind-bending thing. I saw this thing where Tony Robbins is doing these events now holographically. Oh, so he's in one location doing an event, and they're transmitting him to a stage in another location in another city, and it's It's literally like real life. It's like he's standing there. Wow. Think that through for a second. Like the speed and the adaptation of technology, the way that we can transmit messages. I mean, you can do a Facebook post and reach millions of people with a click of a button.
Right.
We couldn't do that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And so I think this millennial generation that's coming in is kind of going, whoa, wait. My mom and dad are like old school, like get a job and go to college and whatever. But that's really not working for a whole lot of people. Yeah. Now there's this whole revolution of technology and food trucks. And I can start my own little business with like nothing out of my garage. Well, what do I do? How do I do it? Mm-hmm. But the real thing for me with this new generation is people saying, I don't really like how I feel about the way things, quote, should be.
Right.
And I'm not digging it. Like, I don't feel good. It doesn't make me feel good. Yeah. I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. And again, the label of millennials is like these defiant little punk ass kids, which a lot of them are. But then again, so are a lot of guys my age too. You know what I mean? I think it's brilliant. I think it's fascinating. I think it's really freaking cool because the way that things have been, the Republican, the Democrat, the two-party system, the way shit is gone, I think is, like Malcolm Gladwell talked about, it's coming across, the pendulum is swinging, and it's about to go back the other way, and it's going to be violent, and it's going to be a real revolution of consciousness, of the way politics happen in America, of the way laws are passed. That's a real revolution.
It is. Well, change is always destructive.
Change is brilliant.
It is.
Change is brilliant.
So I look at what we're going through the country, and I know a lot of people who are very upset with who's in the cabinet right now, and who was in the cabinet before, because I have friends on both sides of this.
Right.
And it's really interesting for me to see that I think there is sort of this Phoenix Rising thing happening. Because we have Gen Xers who are like, you know what? I don't think I believe what the boomers were telling us. We raised our children. I'm
one of them.
Our millennials to challenge that. Yeah. And so we can't really revolt at them and say, how dare you challenge me now? We taught them. We taught them to challenge the government because we saw that what our parents taught us, like go to work and do this, is not the American dream. It's just, it can't happen nowadays. And so I see what's happening with the millennials as that sort of phoenix, this sort of rebirthing of something cool is going to happen. My daughter is a taxidermist. She's a taxidermist. She's 26. She owns her own business. And she says, I am not going to work for somebody else. I'm going to do this for me. This interests me. She learned from a West Valley cop. How the hell did she get into
that? How did she decide to get into taxidermy?
She wanted to learn more about bones. She was like really into like, I want to learn about archaeology. I want to learn about, that kind of round. And so she called a taxidermist and said, can you teach me? Can I come in and learn about bones? He's like, that's not how this is done. That's not how any of this is done. Yeah. And so she's like, oh, well, can I come in and watch? And it's really just an art. It's an art form. I mean, there's sewing and sculpting, and there's just a whole sort of side to it that it just astounds me that she's found. She was on Vice. They came and filmed her, did a whole series on her because it was just so fascinating that she's like, I'm immortalizing this person, this animal.
Thing.
Yeah,
hopefully
they
not people.
gave. Well,
they're not doing it with people.
Not people.
Right?
Not
okay.
people. Did I say people? I didn't mean people. Sorry.
I'm like, I want to go down and check that out.
Got
like,
a list,
when I die, I would love to be stuffed and mounted in somebody's living room. That'd be great. I'll have an AR-15 and like I'll just be a crazy lunatic. That'd be awesome.
No, but she bucked the system. She challenged the system. She does it in all types of ways. Some ways I'm not as fond of, but she's raising awareness. She dumpster dives. She goes to these really high-end restaurants, and she took a film crew and like, look at all the waste that happens in our country. Look at how much food we are throwing away. And then 2 blocks away, you see these homeless people that don't have food. So our millennials are teaching us something. As much as we don't want to hear and we don't want to see it. So I would rather wait and watch. I would rather say, I would love you to be part of my team. Bring your energy, be a part of it. Because there's a lot to tap in there. There's a lot from the boomers, too, that I learned. So
it's really a fascinating time to be alive. It is. Like, I wake up every day and I'm just like, what kind of mischief can I get into today? Like, what can I learn? Like, how deep can I go in this radical journey called life today? You know what I mean? And these kinds of conversations really inspire me because I realize that more and more and more what these labels and these stereotypes are, they're truly changing, and they can only last so long, and generational shifts are happening. You know what I mean?
true.
And just by sitting down with my kids the other night around the fire, really like showed me some of that, like
I can
where
tell.
they get it.
Yeah.
They get it. And it's
Yeah.
not this, I mean, elementary, I didn't get the government when I was a kid. I knew who the president was, and we had the president's picture and the vice president, and, you know, we knew all that stuff. But like now my kids are like wanting to know why,
Yes.
you know, and that stuff
And
fascinates
that's the most
me, man.
powerful thing, is to teach them the why.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what you really want to do, is you want to teach your children how to think. You want to give them some
Well, show
guiding
'em.
principles. Yeah, lead by example.
I think showing them is huge for me, and it's something I've been ruthlessly committed to. Is
Yeah.
I can tell my kids who to be and how to be and whatever. I can tell them drugs are bad. All drugs are bad.
Yeah.
I don't tell them that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's certain things that you've been led to believe are bad that aren't bad, and let me tell
Right.
you why, and let's have some conversation around it. And watching their minds expand into a different reality than what I was taught and how I was taught is, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's brilliant.
It's fun for me to see that in an adult. Because children, you have that ability that they don't have these preconceived notions about
Yeah.
what life is. You don't have to break through the barrier of propaganda. They haven't been taught that. They haven't been, programmed yet.
Yeah.
But to see an adult who you share this experience with or this wisdom with, and they either experience it themselves, and that epiphany happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so amazing to actually see when we're in a audience, have somebody raise their hand and just have their mind blown after watching our documentary or something. Just tell me more. They can't get enough. That, I think, is cool. I'm excited about our children. I'm excited about our millennials. But our old dogs, they can still learn new tricks.
And I think, again, going back to the same almost root of this conversation, is the idea that people are wanting more.
Oh, yeah.
They really do
They're
want
hungry.
more. And I don't care what aspect of life you're in, technology is a beautiful thing. It's opened us up. It's
Yep.
opened up our minds. It's
Yep.
opened up our hearts. It's opened up our ability to learn. And I think it's phenomenal. I think like the conversation of cannabis, the conversation of government, the conversation of
Yep.
life, period, is really phenomenal right now, because there's nothing you can't
Yeah.
pick up. There's nothing you can't learn. So what's the best way for people to help Truce, or to help
Okay.
to
I can
help
give you
Truce?
three websites I
Okay.
can give you. If
And
you
we'll
want
we'll put links to all those on the podcast, so that'll
Okay.
be way easier for people. But like people that are listening right now, no matter where they are, we're gonna have people all
Okay.
over the country. What's the best way for them to get involved and to become an advocate for this conversation?
For this conversation, if they're all over the country, I would want them to go to my sister organization that is federally and it spreads everywhere, and that's Americans for Safe Access. You can find them on the website too, and they have a bunch of information about how to become an advocate, to start your own chapter if you want in different states. And Truce is just local for Utah, but we again work with Americans for Safe Access. So if somebody in Florida is wanting to get involved, find your local chapter, get involved with there, and then we're all one big Canna family. Truce has our local organization and our local nonprofit. We work on our advocacy work here, and then our ballot initiative efforts. But federally, I would say Americans for Safe Access.
Cool.
Yep.
I'm excited by the conversation. I think too the social media and the technology capabilities that we have of being able to spread messages as quick as we are. I think having more people like you sharing openly their stories, even in a state like this that it's like
Yeah.
not legal yet. You
Right.
know what I mean? You, Mark, different people like that. If you start filling the airwaves with real people, real stories, real experiences, those TV ads that you see of the happy couple in the Garden of Eden in a bathtub, that stuff, people start to realize it's bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
awesome. What else do you want to tell everybody? What
Get
else didn't we
involved.
cover?
I really just want people to get involved. I mean, I see so much crap on social media, and people are just so flippish with their comments, and it's so easy to write a comment and walk away and think you've done something.
Yeah.
I just show up. I just want people to be boots on the ground, and it means just not necessarily going to rallies, because they're not always effective.
Right.
But contact your legislator, make that phone call, find other people, do things that actually help the community,
Like vote for me.
and vote for you.
See? Vote for me and we're going to change the world. I'm going to single-handedly change the whole damn thing. Well, you're awesome. I appreciate it. I'm a
Thanks.
huge advocate. I'm a huge supporter of not just the cannabis conversation, but, the consciousness conversation of growth,
Right.
of expansion, of the possibility of there being a better way.
Yeah,
It's
because
one
if
of the-
you can accept this, what else do you not know about?
Well, that's one of the things I ask my clients. I'm like, you know, it's a really interesting question. I'm like, is it possible that you're wrong?
Yes.
Is it possible that what you believe is wrong or just not right? And when you start thinking that way and thinking, is it possible that there's a better way to do this?
Yep.
You start asking, open-ended questions like that when people are like, well, maybe, and you start opening up the conversation of consciousness. So,
Agreed.
well, at one point in time, we're going to have big 420 rallies in Utah. I think it's coming, but we'll keep it on the
DL.
We'll keep it on the DL for now and make sure that everybody's in the medical world is taken care of. So my friends, get involved, get your asses off the couch. And by the way, when I am president, I will shut off all the TVs. I will find a way to do it.
Can we make it a national holiday?
I will call Putin. Like, we won't deal with the whole Russian thing. It won't be a conspiracy theory. I'll be like on the phone with Putin, be like, how do I do this? Like, you're a communist joint. How do I shut down all the TVs? You know what I mean? That's probably not good for my campaign right now, is it?
Oh, Lord.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe we'll
well,
get
who
more
knows?
votes
Maybe
for
more
that.
people will like that. But saying that we're...
He's talking real. I'm voting.
He's actually going to shut my TV down. I can't watch Game of Thrones tonight. Fuck that guy. I'm not voting for him. All right, my friends. Stay out of trouble. God bless America. Thank you very much for coming on.
You bet. Thank you.
See ya.